Hello, dear students. Today I would like to give you information about the causes of motor aphasia and the spread of English. The subject of today's lesson is Introduction to the Linguistics. So let's get started. First of all, let's speak about motor aphasia. Motor aphasia. In this lecture, we are going to discuss motor aphasia, or the loss of the power to articulate speech through brain damage. In general English, a motor means a machine which moves or powers something. Of course, the brain isn't really a machine. However, under certain circumstances, people can experience trouble performing the motor or output aspects of speech. Okay, why should we know about motor aphasia? What is the connection of motor aphasia with linguistics? As we know, motor aphasia, it is disease which is connected with language. This is the brain damage which mostly affects our language. And those who suffer this kind of disease, they are not able to speak. That's why it is one of the most important things that we should know when we want to know the theory of the language, when we want to know the linguistics, and etc. So let's talk about the causes of motor aphasia. The most common cause of aphasia is brain damage resulting from a stroke, the blockage or rupture of a blood vessel in the brain. Loss of blood to the brain leads to brain cell death or damage in areas that control language. Brain damage caused by a severe head injury, a tumor, an infection, or a degenerative process also can cause aphasia. In these cases, the aphasia usually occurs with other types of cognitive problems, such as memory problem or confusion. Primary progressive aphasia is a term used for language difficulty that develops gradually. This is due to the gradual generation of brain cells located in the language networks. Sometimes this type of aphasia will progress to a more generalized dementia. So, let's talk about the symptoms of Broca's aphasia include. So, there are several symptoms of Broca aphasia. The first one is poor and absent grammar. Those who have Broca's aphasia, they have poor grammar or they totally don't know grammar. The second one is difficulty forming complete sentences. And it is if people suffer with this Broca's aphasia, they have problem to form complete sentences. They mostly use separate short words, and mostly children suffer with this kind of disease. So the next one is omitting certain words such as the, and is. A person with Broca's aphasia may say something like cup me instead of I want the cup. So the next one is more difficulty using verbs than nouns correctly. So they have difficulties with using verbs. It is difficult for them to use verbs. That's why they mostly use just separate nouns. The next one, difficulty articulating sounds and words. So sometimes it is difficult for them to pronounce some sounds mostly sounds like with many letters, and it is difficult to pronounce for them the words properly. So the next one is difficulty repeating what has been said by others. So for these people, it is difficult to repeat the same sentences. And sometimes, if you ask these people to repeat the sentence, they can omit some words while repeating the sentence. That's why it shows the symptom of Broca's aphasia. So the next one. The next symptom is trouble with writing sentences. So they can't pronounce the words properly, and it can also affect the way of their writing. It means they can also make mistake while writing the words. They may make spelling mistakes as well. So the next difficulty, it is reading. Of course, as we said, this is connected with the language. This kind of disease, they can't read the words properly because they can't pronounce the words properly. That's why while reading the words, they can make mistakes. The next one is problem with full comprehension. Sometimes when you say anything, it is difficult for them to understand what you are saying. That's why it is difficult for them to catch the meaning of your sentence. That's why if you face this kind of people, you should be short and simple. Then it will be understandable for them. The next one, difficulty following directions. So when you give the instruction to these kind of people, it is difficult for them to to understand the instruction. That's why while directing these kind of people, you should be more simple and you should explain it in a simple way. So the last one is frustration. As they have these kind of problems with language, they also afraid of making the speech. They can afraid of producing the speech because it is when they can't pronounce the words properly, it gives them frustration, and they are afraid of making another sentences. That's why when you talk this kind of people, you may see this, they are mostly shy and they are afraid of making a speech. So the next one. Now we know everything which is connected with motor aphasia. Now let's move to the spread of English. How did English become global? The answer is that the process began as soon as it arrived in England in the 5th century, having traveled from continental Europe. In this lecture, we are going to look at the impact that English as a global language has had on the world. First, I'm going to mention some key dates in the spread of English. I'm going to talk about how it all began, who were the first true linguists, when did linguists begin. We'll start with Panini in India in the 5th century BCE. You will also see that there were many developments before Europeans began to analyze their languages in the 14th century. So, the language first came to England in the 5th century with the Angles and Jutes. Between the 5th and the 11th centuries, it made its way to Cornwall, Wales, Cumbria, and the south of what is now Scotland. In these areas, English met the traditional Celtic languages. Many people from the English upper class also took the language to Scotland as they left England after the invasion of the Normans in 1066. English made its way to Ireland in the 12th century. From the 16th century on, England was emerging as an imperial nation, and as the British Empire grew, so did the spread of English. So, English is a well-traveled language. On this way, it has developed through contact with other languages and cultures. English still has many grammatical similarities with German because of the shared roots of the two languages. After its arrival in England in the 5th century, it was influenced by the Celtic languages of Britain. It also took many words from the Vikings who invaded England before the Norman conquest in 1066. So, I want to add some information about the period of 1066, Norman conquest. After Norman conquest, English, the language English totally changed because of the influence of the French language. Before, in 5th century, the grammar of English language was too complicated. They had lots of inflections. It was the structure of the English language was like the grammar, like the structure of Russian language now, or the structure of the German language now. But after the Norman conquest, it started to change. Because William the Conqueror, with himself, he brought also the French language. And from 1066, the official language of Britain was French language, and he forced people to speak in French language. And mostly those who worked to the government, they had to learn French language. And after this, it influenced the English language mostly. As we know nowadays, 80% of the language, I mean English language, it is the words of 80% of the words of the language are borrowed words, and English language borrowed several words from different kind of languages. And if you know French language, you may notice that there are lots of words from French language. And for French people, or for those who want to learn French language also, it comes easy if they know English language. Because if you see any kind of word in English, you may see the similar word in French also, and it means the meaning of these words are the same. And also the structure of the grammar structure of the English language, it is also the same, almost the same as French language. And here you may see that now in the 5th century, it was the grammar of the English language was too complicated, and after 1066 it lost its lots of grammar rules, and now it is I mean modern English, it is more easy. Even if we compare American and English languages, American and England London English, I mean, you may see also several differences. For example, it is British English, it is more standard English, but American English, it is more uh, it is not so complicated. You may make mistakes even while speaking. Instead of he doesn't do it, you may say he don't do it. But it is okay in oral speech, of course, when you are communicating with someone, it is okay for them if you make this kind of mistakes. But if you are in Britain, if you make this kind of mistake, it means it is very rude mistake of English. That's why now we can see the differences, some changes of British English and American English. So now it was briefly information about the history of the English language. So now let's talk about the arrival of the Normans in the 11th century. Okay, after the Normans in the arrival of the Normans in the 11th century, introduced French as a language of government and made a deep impact on the English language. From the 15th century onwards, words came into the language from Latin and Greek. Then a whole range of influences came with the British Empire. Today, in the 21st century, email and word processing software make it easy for the written language to travel great distances in very short spaces of time. British English is perhaps most influenced by American English. Many British people find this hard to accept. However, because of the power of the USA and the process is likely to continue. So it was the end of today's lecture. If you have any questions, you may telegram me. I can answer your questions. And I think it was very informative and fruitful lesson for you, because you could get information about the history of the language, and beside it you give information about multi-aphasia, the causes of the multi-aphasia, and the effects of the multi-aphasia. Thank you for your attention. The lesson is over. Bye.